In a bombshell ruling, the Colorado Supreme Court has barred Donald Trump from appearing on the Republican primary ballot in the state for 2024, finding that he engaged in insurrection on January 6th and is therefore not eligible to run for president. This is the first time that a candidate has been ruled ineligible under that provision since its inception in 1868, which makes sense in that Donald Trump is the first candidate and the first president to engage in an insurrection against our own government since then. According to the Colorado Supreme Court's ruling, the district court did not err in concluding that the events at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021 constituted an insurrection. The district court did not err in concluding that President Trump engaged in that insurrection through his personal actions. President Trump's speech inciting the crowd that breached the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021 was not protected by the First Amendment. The sum of these parts is this: President Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3 because he is disqualified. It would be a wrongful act under the election code for the secretary to list him as a candidate on the presidential primary ballot. We do not reach these conclusions lightly. We are mindful of the magnitude and weight of the questions now before us. We are likewise mindful of our solemn duty to apply the law without fear or favor and without being swayed by public reaction to the decisions that the law mandates we reach. Trump's spokesman issued a response on behalf of Donald Trump, saying, unsurprisingly, the all-Democrat-appointed Colorado Supreme Court has ruled against President Trump, supporting a Soros-funded left-wing group's scheme to interfere in an election on behalf of crooked Joe Biden by removing President Trump's name from the ballot and eliminating the rights of Colorado voters to vote for the candidate of their choice. Democrat Party leaders are in a state of paranoia over the growing dominant lead President Trump has amassed in the polls. They have lost faith in the Biden presidency and are now doing everything they can to stop the American voters from throwing them out of office next November. The Colorado Supreme Court issued a completely flawed decision tonight, and we will swiftly file an appeal to the United States Supreme Court and a concurrent request for a stay of this deeply undemocratic decision. We have full confidence that the U.S. Supreme Court will quickly rule in our favor and finally put an end to these un-American lawsuits. Which, of course, is a lot of finger-pointing at Democrats for something that Donald Trump, and only Donald Trump, was responsible for. Remember, no one forced him to incite an insurrection. He made the conscious decision to do so, and thereby violate the plain text of the U.S. Constitution, all on his own. Trump wanted to lead the party of personal responsibility. Perhaps he should consider taking some. Now, importantly, this decision will inevitably be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which will have the final say on this matter. If the U.S. Supreme Court opts to hear this case, then its ruling will resolve this question for every case across the nation. Meaning, if SCOTUS says that Trump can appear on the ballot, then he'll appear on the ballot everywhere. Conversely, if SCOTUS says that he can't appear on the ballot because he engaged in insurrection and is therefore disqualified, then Trump won't be able to appear on the ballot in any state, meaning his hopes of becoming president are gone in one fell swoop. Conversely, let's say the U.S. Supreme Court opts not to take up this case. In that instance, the ruling of the lower court, which in this case is the Colorado Supreme Court, would stand. But it would only apply to Colorado. Other states would be free to litigate this question, and it would be possible that their highest courts could rule differently. And that would likely cause a lot of chaos, which is why it's likely that the U.S. Supreme Court will step in and hand down a ruling on this issue. And that's a point that my Legal Breakdown co-host Glenn Kirshner explained here.
Yeah, wild inconsistency among the states on this issue is not good for anybody, quite frankly. I don't think it's particularly good for our democracy. So that prompts me to strongly suspect the Supreme Court will grab hold of one of these cases. One of the reasons the Supreme Court will exercise jurisdiction in a case is if there is what's called a split in the districts. If one federal district decides an issue one way and another federal district decides the issue another way, the Supreme Court has a keen interest in taking those cases, consolidating them for review, and then decide it, because it really is important, setting aside the sort of quality of the judgments we're getting out of this Supreme Court. It really is important for the Constitution to only be interpreted, with one voice, having one meaning throughout the different federal jurisdictions. I think the same applies by extension to the states. When you have something as consequential as whether a person can be on a presidential ballot or not, yes, it's up to the 50 states to administer their state election laws, but I can't envision the Supreme Court not accepting review of this and wanting to put one word out about what the 14th Amendment's disqualification law and clause means. Does it mean that if Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, he can't be president again? Or does it only mean he can't be a member of Congress or he can't be a member of a state legislature, which makes absolutely no sense. So I think at the end of the day, this is going to be one for the U.S. Supreme Court.
The good news at this point is that the U.S. Supreme Court is likely to act quickly. The fact is that this issue can't languish for too long because the administration of the general election is already underway. Primary ballots need to be finalized and printed, meaning that if a move as consequential as Trump being removed from the ballot is going to happen, then we'll need to know that soon. So while no one can mandate that the Supreme Court move quickly, all indications are that they understand that speed is of the utmost importance here. In terms of what the Supreme Court will do, it's anyone's guess. Because on one hand, we have a very conservative 6-3 court, a third of which is composed of justices who Donald Trump himself appointed. To suggest that there's no allegiance to him as a person, or at a bare minimum, an ideological alliance, would be ignoring the obvious. However, with that said, if the Supreme Court rules that Trump can appear on the ballot, then it's effectively ignoring the plain text of the U.S. Constitution, and in doing so, placing Trump above the Constitution. And that poses an existential threat to that very court, because if Trump is placed above the Constitution and Trump wins, he'll essentially be a dictator, uninhibited by our laws or our Constitution. And what does a dictator have no need for? A court that acts as a check to his own power, meaning the Supreme Court could essentially be signing its own death warrant if it hands Trump the gift of unchecked power. I'm not sure the court, as partisan as it may be, is in the business of contracting its power away to other branches of government. I asked Glenn for his opinion on the matter of which way the court will rule, and this is what he predicted.
Oh, I have to take a deep breath and try to keep my blood pressure down because I am conflicted. I want desperately to see our democracy, I don't know, survive.
Yeah.
And the way our democracy survives is if insurrectionists are not permitted to retake the reins of power.
Imagine that.
That being said, I'm not wildly enthusiastic about all of the Supreme Court justices doing the right thing in all cases. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to bet 51 cents. I always hedge my bets when I'm not sure, because if I'm wrong, I can say, well, 49% of me, said the other thing, and I get to keep 49 cents of my bet. I'm gonna bet 51 cents on the Supreme Court saying the plain language of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, disqualifies Donald Trump because he engaged in insurrection after he took an oath to support the Constitution. That's where I'm going to put my 51 cents.
So at this point, all eyes turn to the United States Supreme Court. But the fact that we're in this position in the first place is a testament to the danger posed by Trump. Even if the U.S. Supreme Court does ultimately rule in his favor, the fact that multiple judges have already ruled that this guy has incited an insurrection against our own government is a blinking red light that he shouldn't be let within 100 miles of the levers of power in this country. Add that to the 91 criminal charges he's already contending with, and it becomes clear that the prospect of a second Trump term would effectively signal the end of this democratic experiment. This is a man for whom laws don't matter, for whom the Constitution doesn't matter, for whom democracy doesn't matter. He has shown us as much every which way. At this point, we choose not to heed his warnings at our own risk. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.